Welcome to Attitude, a relationship podcast about love, friendships, and everything in between. Hello, and welcome to Attitude with Annabelle. I'm here with a very special celebrity guest. It's my cousin, Joe. Joe, say hello to the listeners.
Hello, everyone.
So Joe and I, as like I just said, we're cousins by, blood, but friends by choice, because I know a lot of people have cousins and are like, I don't even talk to that guy. He just comes to family reunions and I take pictures with him. But me and Joe are like the only person I can go to a dive bar that serves microwavable pizza. Shout out Al's Package Liquor in Cheyenne. Great place. Family, or it's a great place to take the family, the wife, your mistress. Yeah. We like to go out and do karaoke, and we just have a good time. So Joe's here to talk about movies, and he is one of the only people I know that actually has seen more than 5 movies, unlike myself. So Joe, will you tell everybody your relationship with movies and what makes you somebody that will be able to talk about this topic?
Yeah. Thanks for that intro. Yeah. I'm now reflecting on all the dive bar outings and
I know, it's like
next day.
What do we do together? We're always hungover and drunk and finding the locals in Cheyenne to hang out with. What was that guy's name? Playboy?
Yeah. You think it's still open? They probably never closed. They probably
no. They weren't following CDC guidelines. They probably patient zero came from Al's. Let's be real.
The federal government does not influence Al's.
No. So, what's your history with movies, and how did you become a film buff or a cinephile?
So I think like a lot of people, grew up watching movies, with family and friends. You rent whatever's out that week and you kind of get into it. Some of the early ones I remember kind of sticking with me, being a teenager in the early 2000s, it was kind of that wave of sort of hipster indie films. So, you see when, I was very, emo in my feelings at that time. And
yes,
you see things like Garden State or Lost in Translation or Eternal Sunshine. And those really, being 16 and moody, left a large impression on me. And then from there, you start to watch kind of more classic stuff and you kind of expand. And I was also really into Martin Scorsese. I loved Goodfellas and all that kind of stuff. And then when I was applying to college, I had no idea what I wanted to do at all. I just knew I should go and do this thing. And I was applying to CU Boulder, and they have on the application, you have to pick your major or you could be undeclared, but nobody wants to be undeclared because
that's basically saying I'm here just to party.
Yeah, here for the keggers.
Yeah.
But then I saw the film studies major on there, and I was like, oh dang, that sounds like fun. I love movies, and it really was that impulsive of a thing. I didn't have grand visions of I'm gonna be a film critic or a director or anything. I was like, this sounds like fun.
Yeah, if I'm gonna pay for something, I might as well be having fun doing it.
Yeah, and I had no career goal or idea with it. It was just I wanted to do it, and then I loved the film program there, and it was a critical studies program. People think sometimes when you say I went to film school, it's I was shooting and editing and doing all this stuff. I did a little bit of that, but no, it's literally you get college credit for watching movies and talking about them and writing about them, which is
that's awesome.
Pretty sweet gig.
Yeah, people do that for nothing. They do it for free all the time on the internet. I see it on Twitter all the time, people's hot takes on movies. So
that's basically what a class is. It's literally a hot take round table.
Yeah, hot take 101, and then you just talk shit about movies. That sounds like a good time. That sounds So what movies did you watch that you wouldn't have watched if you weren't going to study film?
There was a lot. I felt really lucky, and it's a pretty tight program. You tend to have it's the same 5 or 6 professors, and they all taught some pretty interesting stuff. I took a couple of kind of world cinema classes. One was Latin American cinema, which was really cool. because I did not have much of a background in that, but we watched quite a few films from like South America, some from Cuba. Then I also took like an Asian cinema class,
Wow.
where in that we watched a lot of really interesting films, including the Chinese director Zhang Yimou, like some of his early stuff. Like the other one that was really interesting, I actually took a Hollywood musicals class, and I think
Okay.
most people kind of think, at a certain point in your life, you either are or aren't a musicals person.
Yeah, I don't know if you listened to the last episode I did about Hamilton, but I make fun of musicals because I truly despise them, because when I went to Catholic school, they would take us to all the Catholic high school plays. That would be our field trip. And so I saw like Guys and Dolls, like in I was 8 years old. And it's like, why the fuck am I seeing this at 8 years? I want to see something cool. And then we saw Oklahoma, and I was like, oh, fuck no, fuck musicals, everything they stand for. And then, I still haven't seen Hamilton due to my PTSD with going to these field trips. So...
Well, and I would have thought the same thing. Like, I was not a musicals person at all, but the class is being taught by my professor, Ernesto Acevedo Munoz, who taught that Latin American cinema class that I loved. And he and I ended up having a few classes together, and I just loved him. He was like, you should take this class. It's a great class. And I'm like, but it's musicals. I don't like musicals.
I'm a man.
But he totally persuaded me. Now I'm about him, all these great.
Okay. So what musical would you recommend to somebody who hates musicals like myself?
If you hate them, if you're looking for one that I think is just kind of fun and contrary, a good kind of Hollywood one to try if you haven't tried it, Chicago is a good entry point. I actually show that to my film students because it's kind of dark and cynical.
I actually have seen that in live form and on obviously the Hollywood smash hit with Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Oh yeah.
I know a few of the songs by accident. So I actually, what? Now that I think about it, I do like Chicago because it's good music. I like Renee Zellweger. I don't know what she does to me, but anything she's in, I'm like, wow, what a star. What an unhinged star. So
whenever I hear her name, I always think of the Chappelle show where they do the trading spouses. Who
are you? She's great.
But
that's a good one. Okay.
That one, and he was really big into West Side Story, and he did a good job of teaching it too. And he kind of talked about it was an interesting film for him growing up, kind of seeing Puerto Rican representation on film, even though some of it's essentially brown face,
stereotypical, Mm-hmm.
But he talked about, and he did a great job teaching. He just loved it. And he actually literally wrote the book on it, so he did.
So he's authority on it,
And those were kind of the two that got me into it. And then there's some other cool ones that are kind of just weirder. There's the Lars von Trier Dancer in the Dark with Bjork, which is just
I love Bjork. So
who doesn't?
Okay. Now you're persuading me. I might, if you this time next year, I might actually know every musical. So
hey, but that was kind of the experience at Boulder, was being persuaded to kind of get outside of what my normal film interests were. And a lot of the classes I took, I didn't know anything about them going in other than the professor was interesting.
Yeah.
I took another one, it was on the Polish director Krzysztof Kieslowski, and I'd literally never seen any of his films, and his most famous film is called The Decalogue. It's 10 short films that are based around the 10 Commandments, and as a plot summary, that sounds not the most fun time.
That sounds like my Catholic school hell.
Yeah, exactly. And then followed up, you chase it down with Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But then it's a great class. And so that was kind of the experience, was just trying to be open to all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Really known. And so that was really, as much as anything, part of what got me into or kind of furthered my film love was how much that school kind of pushed you to do non-traditional things. Even I took a filmmaking class, and it was all abstract and experimental film. It's kind of if you've seen The Simpsons when they have the film festival, and it's the shorts, and it's all kind of
weird ass shit.
What the hell are we looking at?
Yeah.
It was cool. I mean, it really expanded a lot of my horizons. And
and now you can tell people like me who would never watch a musical in her life, but if Bjork's in it, I'm going to just go ahead and check it out. So after you got your degree, did you think about going into like pursuing like directing or screenwriting or anything? Or are you just like, you know what? I like that I have this degree and I like I have this knowledge. I'm going to go share it with like a different, you know, set of eyes and ears, like kids in high school.
Yeah, I think it was kind of more on that side. Like, in terms of like directing and writing, you know, I've enjoyed like the little bit I've done, just kind of like, you know, messing around more than anything. But I think I realized, you know, fairly early on, like I'm more of a critic than a creator, and I think that that is a divide a lot of time in the arts. And you know, I just don't really like the impulse doesn't really strike me to like make things, but I love, you know, writing about them and discussing them. And so I kind of knew that I wanted to go more down that path. But and I also like I by that point like picked up the English degree as well. Like I did the double major. So I knew I wanted to get into teaching. I wasn't quite sure like what that was going to look like. But I graduated like right in the middle of the like Great Recession and all that. So, you know, fun time.
One of the many that we're going to go through as millennials, you know.
I know. I feel like we're already on like round 3 of that.
Yeah. I'm like, honestly, I'm not even like, they're like recession. I'm like, yeah, I was born into the recession. Like,
oh, yeah.
I know. Yeah. I feel like Bane from Batman. Like, you were merely molded. I was born into this. So,
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never known anything else other than economic
and yeah, poverty and desperation. That's all I've known. So yeah.
So in terms of poverty and desperation, I was actually, you know, so I graduated December 2009, and then I was unemployed for a full year after college graduation, which is
gotta love it. And then when they start knocking on your door, like, hey, are you gonna pay these student loans back? And it's like, first of all, when I get the money, I'll let you know, but I guarantee I'm not gonna pay you back. So go fuck off.
Yeah. And I had nothing, and I had applied for a couple of like teaching fellowships, but I would go to those interviews and it was all people who went to like Yale and Harvard.
And you're like, am I at the right place?
Yeah. I bet I could out cake stand all of these. But then my first job that had anything to do with film, I actually got a job in Denver here. There's the local art house theater is called the Mayan. And I got a job there for minimum wage. And so it was, you know, putting my film degree to use for $7.90 an hour or whatever it was at the time. So, but it was a good atmosphere to be around in that you get free movies, one, so you get to go see.
Bonus.
But two, it's kind of, you know, it reminds me of the record store in High Fidelity where you work with all these people who are like way overqualified for they have and talk about movies all day and talk shit to each other.
Love that. Yeah, that's like a good you know, segue into quote unquote adulthood, is like you get to have that experience before you go to another side of hell, which is your career, which is you will die here. So
true.
Yeah. This podcast is turning very dark. Like I need to like get it together. It's usually like all fun and jokes. I'm over here like talking about the despair I have. Everybody, I'm okay. I'm okay, everybody.
That's where things always go with me. You know, that's kind of, I mean, this is our conversations going back, you know. 15 years. Yeah. It's like,
we're always like self-deprecating, and we're like, I think we're like one of the most successful of our family members, and we're always like, I hate my life and everything sucks. And then we're like, let's go to work. So after you got your job in teaching, what do you feel about movies as you watch these kids in high school and you're like, you don't know anything about anything, but you think you do? Do you feel that way when they like start talking about movies and they're like, hey, Mr. Gardner, have you seen Fast and the Furious? And you're like, oh yeah, you know, on accident when it was on USA for 24-hour marathon. Yeah.
True. Well, yeah, Paul Walker, rest in peace, man.
R.I.P. Oh, don't even get me started on that, because my kids, the second graders, still to this day are very devastated by the loss of Paul Walker. They will request that song that was written for him with Wiz Khalifa, and they'll cry they'll play, Miss Burr, will you play that song? And everybody will be in tears. That him and Juice WRLD are very like that's touchy subject in second grade, man. So when you talk to the students, what are the films that they think are the greatest films of all time?
Well, so it's interesting because like, so I also like, I get to teach like a high school film class, which is really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And they like, it's interesting to me because they've, in terms of going back to what you said, fate and, like being born into this world, they've been very much born into a world now, and it makes me feel old saying this, but they all, they don't really have memory prior to kind of the like glut of like superhero movies and like Marvel dominating everything.
Yeah.
And like that, for a lot of them, that's kind of like what they grew up watching, is very heavy on like
action
films and like,
mm-hmm.
and they all, and then you kind of get the more, you start to see sort of the like burgeoning hipster group, whether it's, the ones who have kind of gone into Tarantino and
the Tarantino bros already starting. They're starting.
Oh yeah. And then I remember also like a lot of kids were very into specifically like some of the the kind of bro kids, a lot of them get more into like when Once Upon a Time in Hollywood came out, they were really into it. But for a lot of them, I feel like there's more tendency these days for them to kind of like TV series is more what they're into versus.
Oh yeah, I feel like you're right. Because do you feel like the movies have started, especially now with the pandemic, Hollywood hasn't been able to like film these, major blockbuster hits because they're not going to be able to make money. So they're like, we'll just do like these small like films that we can send straight to Netflix. Do you see like a decline in, the quality of movies that are coming out since or pre-pandemic even? Like, do you think movies have gotten worse?
Well, I think it's interesting because like, and some people have written about kind of how there's like a gap in the middle where it's like there's on the one hand these like big Hollywood blockbuster like event movies that still come out and people still go see. Then on the other side, there's kind of like low budget and indie films, a lot of which get like simultaneously released on like streaming as they're like theaters. And then there's kind of that sort of like mid-range of like, sort of that like intelligent Hollywood movie that's kind of like vanished. And I think about that as something that is kind of like a gap that is a problem where like if you want to, let's say you're with your group of friends and you're trying to go see something on like a Friday night, like unless there's, some sort of like superhero movie, like there's not really
not a choice. There's really not like a variety of movie. You're right. Because I'm trying to think of the last movie I saw was The Joker, that before pandemics, and there wasn't anything else out during that time. And it was like, I remember when I was growing up, there was a choice. Like there was a movie for every genre at the same time. And now it's like, there's that blockbuster hit and there's, Nicholas Sparks adaptation. And that's pretty much, that's it. That's all you have.
Yeah. And so, like you'll get the rare kind of like more like interesting original movie that like kind of breaks out, something like Get Out that somehow kind of like captures something that like gets at that level of popularity. Like those don't feel like they happen as much as they did in like the like previous decade. And so I think that is like definitely an issue. Like there's still a lot of good things that come out, but it doesn't feel like on a week to week basis there's a lot put out that is like original or interesting.
No, I don't think, and I was going to bring this up too, the originality is gone. Like there's so many remakes, and I haven't seen a remake where I'm like, wow, that was almost as good as the original, if not better. Like, have you felt that way about this remake culture that's been happening? Because I feel like there's no new ideas, like, and they're making the remakes because there's none of these original thoughts.
And it is like, in the way it gets talked about a lot in like the film industry is the whole idea of like an IP, like an intellectual property. And it's basically, if you have something that already exists that has a certain degree of popularity, you have like a built-in fan base.
Yes.
So whether that's superhero movies or remakes, you already know, like, if I put out something that is a remake of something gone before, whether it's like good or not, a certain percentage of the population is already going to have some like built-in interest.
Yeah.
And so like I feel like there's so rare a time when those are interesting. And I think about, for example, like, you know, Disney's whole thing of remaking their own animated movies. It's like, what is the purpose?
What's the purpose of that? And none of them have been good. I don't care who liked The Lion King just because of Beyonce. She's not a good actress, and she did not translate well as a voice actress. And I thought that movie was truly like bone chilling because it was all the animals. It wasn't cute. It was like,
weird. Yeah.
I was scared. I was like, turn this off. Like, I don't want to see this baboon with like realistic, you know, genitalia, like talking to me. Like I'm petrified.
No baboon balls.
No, I don't want to see that. I don't,
Yeah,
I just want to see
junk.
Yeah, I want to see Rafiki's blue butt like I saw in the animated film. But yeah, it's just like there's no originality. And like Mulan, for example, like that was like a big, you know, flop because, you know, it didn't have music, which made the movie what it was like, you know, we ignored the fact that it was historically inaccurate because there was great music in there. So.
Well, and there is like, you know, there've been a couple that I thought like did a good job. Like the one that I tend to find a lot of people disagree with me on, but I thought like the Bradley Cooper, Lady Gaga, Star is Born was actually like a really interesting movie.
It was good. I thought there was nothing wrong with that. And that's been remade like 5 times over. So it's kind of like, well, goes with like it's like generational. Like they're going to probably remake it in, you know, 2060 when, you know, a dystopian film. So
yeah, everybody's going to be like a, you know, cyborg.
She's gonna have
like Westworld.
Yeah, it's just gonna be Westworld. She's gonna be an android. But yeah, it's just the remakes are becoming so like overdone that you almost expect them to be bad. I don't even have interest in seeing them, only to see them to like fail, basically.
Yeah.
So
I wonder, like, sometimes and I feel like I actually see almost a difference even from when I started teaching like 7 years ago versus now. Like, there's kind of less engagement with movies, it feels like, as just like a normal thing you do. Because I mean, I felt like growing up, like that was just what we did. You know,
we went to Blockbuster on a Friday night, and I rented Homeward Bound over and over again, which is a cinematic masterpiece. If you guys have not seen Homeward Bound, I implore you to see it. It's a great performance by, I think it was not Rosie O'Donnell. What's that? The cat. What's that lady's name that the loud actress?
I don't remember isn't that one like?
Not Rosie O'Donnell. It's whatever that's crazy bitch's name. Roseanne. Thank you.
Oh, is it? Yeah. And then
it's Roseanne. Roseanne gives the last great performance of her time before she truly went off the deep end.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, it's got laughs. It's got, you know, very serious moment drama. It's just great, guys.
That one's also, that one's a remake. It was originally like a 60s Disney movie.
And I haven't seen the 60s, but I'm going to say it right now. The 90s version was way better.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, they got snubbed at the Golden Globes. I'm going to say that. So
tragedy.
Such a tragedy. So speaking of like our, you know, growing up in this, you know, culture of movies were the fabric of our every being. Like it was a thing to do as a family, thing to do as an individual, and society was obsessed with like Hollywood. And what do you think was the best era of movies? Like what era do you feel, even if it wasn't, you know, an era you were alive in, what do you believe is the best era that had the best movies?
Well, and I feel like, you know, I'm actually kind of influenced by our family on this, but I love like, you know, film of the 70s. When you're talking, you have like The Godfather, you have The Deer Hunter, you have like Taxi Driver. And I remember, you know, growing up, like, you know, The Godfather was basically our family touchstone of.
Why were we watching The Godfather? I think I was 6 years old when I saw. I mean, it was on accident because it was just on TV. And my parents are watching it, but I watched it religiously from like the age of 6 until, you know, now. Like,
oh yeah, and it's. I mean, for them, it's, you know, you have a big Catholic family. Mm-hmm. You have a nice amount of like memorable lines that you can repeat kind of at any point in time, you know, take the gun, or take the cannolis, all that. And then you also have in that like it's the kind of thing you can return to like over and over again. And I remember my mom like kind of would show me a lot of those. Like we would just sit down and have kind of like a movie night, and it's just, yeah, let's watch The Godfather or The Deer Hunter or, all of these things that you wouldn't normally expect as like a 13, 14-year-old to.
But it's like, why not? Like, and I'm so appreciative of like that our family didn't shy away from like, we could pretty much watch whatever we wanted within reason. Like, obviously, my mom was like, you can watch and listen to anything as long as it doesn't have like, country music in it. Like that was pretty much the only like we could watch whatever we wanted. It didn't matter. Like we watched rated R movies since I was 3. My first word was from Child's Play. So truly, like I did have any regulations in my home, and neither did you guys, because we all like had, even though we lived in different states, we all knew the same movies and all had watched the same films. So
and when I remember too, our older cousin Thomas, he would kind of guide us through a lot of those, and the sort of level of explicitness kind of escalated earlier than most like would want you to have. But and it felt like film culture was just kind of part of that upbringing where it was just kind of expected that, like you said, we'd seen some of the same things, and and I also think your dad did always love the Child's Play or the Cujo or all
Hellraiser. Just anything that was wildly inappropriate for a child to see. But now I'm like totally desensitized, and like I'll go see like a movie like Midsommar, and people will be like walking out of the theater. I'm like, this is nothing.
It's fine.
Oh yeah. Okay, so let's talk about like directors now. So we have like movies like Midsommar, Hereditary. I don't know what's his name. I'm totally coming off my head.
Ari Aster.
Yes, and did you see as a film student movie that he did? It was called There's Something About the Johnsons.
Oh no!
And you need to watch it. And truly, like his mind is obviously, if you don't like anything that makes you uncomfortable or disturbing, don't go look at this movie. But basically, he. It's a short film about a Black family, and there's incest going on. And it's a very interesting concept. And it's like, the mother's love for her son, but it like the husband and wife relationship supersedes the love for the child. It's wild. And there's like a huge like twist at the beginning and again at the end. So directors like that, I think he's like going to be the Kubrick of, the current day. And how do you feel about, directors now? Because who do we have besides that's like out of the box like that?
Well, and I would put him up there. I mean, I love both Hereditary and Midsommar, and I think he's one of the sort of most original and interesting ones I've seen in a long time. Where I remember walking out of Hereditary just like
I was sick. I was like physically ill and I was like, I need to make like a therapy appointment because it brought up like some interesting like mental health things. I was like, oh my God, that like a movie hasn't made me think like that since Homeward Bound. So
well, and even like Midsommar, I know
that's a breakup. That's a great breakup movie.
And also I know you had my brother Paul on earlier, and the kind of suicide content of that. I was prepared for that going in, and then it was like, whoa,
like this doesn't happen because it's such a like shocking topic, but it's like very common, and everybody, and the way people deal with suicide, it was like, very interesting to see their take on, the reality of like what suicide does to relationships and to families. So it was like, whoa, this is deep.
And I love the ending of that one, and how it really leaves it up to the audience to figure out how do you feel about everything that goes down. But so I put him up there. I really love what like Jordan Peele's done so far. Like we talked about is great. I thought Us was also fantastic.
Us, and his movies are another one where you have to decide what was the message, and there's so many, and he's never going to tell you. You're never going to know. It's up to the audience to decide. And I think Us was a thing about truly, I think it was like capitalism, but That's just me. I just think of like weird things. It was just like his take on how capitalism affects society and how we're just, So what was your take on us?
I mean, I find it like I need to watch it again. Like I don't know that I can really explain it, which is like kind of a cool feeling about it.
Yeah.
Like it's the sort of thing you walk out where I don't know that I know what I make of that, but I know it's great. And what does the sort of hands across America motif mean in the context of like what he's trying to say? And
that nobody truly cares about homelessness or anybody except for the optics, and then they're forgotten about and put in, this other world. And then your tether is basically like the person of your poverty, like the duality between like people that come out of poverty and try to forget that there's other people that need help. And I don't know, that's just what I'm always trying to relate something back to capitalism.
Well,
they're not going to get away with this as I go pay to see this movie at a major theater. I'm like, capitalism.
Well, that's always the interesting thing, right? Because another recent one, and he's been at it for a while, but like one of my favorite directors, like still making movies, is like David Fincher, and Mank is, you think the advertising kind of makes it seem like it's about the making of Citizen Kane, but it's more about just kind of capitalism in the Hollywood studio system, and like what does that look like in terms of both how it sometimes like works to actively suppress like artistic decisions, but also a lot of that movie is about kind of the politics of it and how it gets intertwined with, especially in California, like some of the, like there was the gubernatorial race that they were kind of a part of in 1940. That's kind of an interesting thing. Like the capitalism and how that affects film, because going back to what we were talking about with how many things are just big blockbusters or like low indies, like it's such a tricky thing because this is probably the most fundamentally capitalistic art form, right?
Absolutely.
Like if you're a musician, you can kind of record your own stuff, do your own thing. If you're a writer, likewise, you just can go off and write and be your own. To make a movie, you basically have to function within this like big business system. Even like Jordan Peele, he's working with like Blumhouse, which is like the kind of indie horror imprint, but it's still like studio system.
You still have to have a producer, and you still have to have funding for these projects, and publicity includes money. And
well, and even I just watched on Saturday Judas and the Black Messiah, and it's a really interesting movie, and it's to a certain degree like some of the messaging is anti-capitalist, but
it's like that was the whole framework of like the Black Panther movement, and it's like it's hard to like separate those, the message from and the message that is how it was created. And
does Warner Brothers putting it out, they obviously aren't trying to start a revolution or anything. So but
it's hard to separate that. Like you have like movies like Black Klansman, and you're like, okay, like Spike Lee is like, he benefits from the big machine, but also he's putting out these movies that are delivering these messages that wouldn't be seen otherwise. So it's like, it's hard to separate that.
And that's part of what I think is like fascinating about it, is when you get some of the artists who do like develop their own voice and individuality like within that system. And whether it's like Jordan Peele, or even like I love like what I've seen from Greta Gerwig so far, like Lady Bird, I think is just like a great.
I love that movie.
Movie. High school. One, it's basically our like high school era, so there's a lot. It's there, but two, I just think it's like such an authentic film, and like going back to like when some of the like original academic critics started writing about film in the 60s, one of the things they found interesting was like within that Hollywood studio system, how is it that certain artists like find their own voice and their own style? And it was a critic, Andrew Sarris, who wrote about it, and he said, or he kind of talked about this like the auteur theory, which he stole from the like French critics, was basically like, so especially back in like the 30s, 40s, 50s, like Hollywood so much wants like a product to put for a mass audience. So it's kind of, how is it that some people do find a way to be like unique individual artists, like Gerwig or like Jordan Peele, or even other ones that have kind of sustained it for a long time. I mean, Wes Anderson has obviously kind of developed his own style and
Yeah.
still gets to do what he wants. And how is it that some get to do that? And so that's one of the like challenges of film, is that like corporate side, but also like that's part of what makes it interesting is, you know, Spike Lee, obviously he's been at it for 35 years now and still, I think, can both do some of the more like Hollywood stuff, like Inside Man kind of movies, but then also, and BlacKkKlansman is, I think, a little more Hollywood than some of his other stuff, but then you also get, you know, has just very unique personal voice, and whether it's like, you know, going back all the way to like Do the Right Thing and some of what that did, or some of what you see in like Red Hook and all that. Like he's just a very interesting person who has like worked in the studio system for a long time and still gets to make interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So I think like there still are a lot of like good films that get made. It's just, it is a challenge.
It's few and far between because they have to go with what's popular at the time, and what's popular is usually not something that has, you know, a message or allows the audience to think for themselves. Because I think a lot of the moviegoers, or, you know, people who see films don't want to be, you know, subjected to or think subjectively. They want to be told like, this is supposed to make you sad, this is supposed to make you laugh, and this is scary. Like they don't want to be like, oh, I don't know what happened. Like I've talked to a lot of people who hate movies with cliffhangers or that don't have a sequel. And I'm like, really? What did you want to happen? Like, why do you want it tied up in a bow? I love a movie that I'm like, ooh, like I'm gonna have to think about this for the next 5 years. Like a lot of people, just because I think it has a lot to do with our society and their, you know, need for instant gratification, that everything has to have like some sort of ending, and it can't just be, you know, an open ending. So I've spoken to a lot of my friends are like, I didn't like you know, whatever, because I want to know what happens at the end. And it's like, that's the beauty of the movie, is like you don't get to know. And they're like, oh, I don't like that, I need a sequel. And I'm like, why do you need a sequel to Paul Blart Mall Cop? So like what was left unsaid?
What more did you want to find out about Paul Blart's psyche? Well, and I think too, like, I agree with that. And I feel that there is that resistance to it, where even you know, we were talking earlier about like the Bane and the Batman trilogy and all that, like that, even that ending, like, you know, you look at like the Dark Knight is like a fairly ambiguous ending, but then it felt like for that third one, they kind of had to do like the tie a bow happy ending.
Yeah.
Fake kind of. And so, like, I think there's like a question there of like, what is it people want from art? And this is something I talk to my students about too, because like right now we're in a unit on like realism as a like art form, and talking about like documentary too. And a lot of the documentary filmmakers, they were like openly pushing back on that idea of like Hollywood as like escapism, that you go on basically this like theme park ride, then you have a happy ending and it's all good. And like you're saying, you know, that to a certain degree is like what a lot of people want. But I feel like, although sometimes I think I can see the value in that, like ultimately those aren't the kinds of movies that stick with you your whole life. And, you know, even thinking about, you know, with Valentine's Day, you know, Eternal Sunshine has always been to me like a Valentine's Day movie. Like,
that is fine. It's just, that movie has stuck with me. I've seen it only twice because it brings up a lot of emotion that I have to like prepare myself to like watch it again. And I'll like watch it intermittently, but I won't watch it all the way till the end because of like the emotions and like the sadness and you like, you know, identify with the characters, and you're just like, I have felt like that before. And a lot of people don't like that movie because they're like, I didn't like how that made me feel. And it's like, it wasn't supposed to make you feel good. It was supposed to show you like the horrors of like a breakup and mental illness and all kinds of things. Like,
and I think, you know, so much of that movie goes into, like how much of a struggle even a good relationship can be. And you know, and the ending is like very ambiguous on a lot of levels, both in terms of like what's literally happening, but also like how do we feel about this couple at the end. And
Yes.
Is this the kind of relationship that you want? Is this really what that's supposed to look like? Because I think about it, you as you like watch as I watch it as I get older, the first time I saw it, I was like 16, 17, and had just ended my first like high school serious relationship. And
I think that's how most people like
Yeah.
begin to watch that movie, because I watched it after like a horrible breakup and I was like, what's going to make me feel better? This movie about forgetting everything. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And it absolutely did not make me feel better.
Oh yeah. And yeah, when you're that age, like the idea of like forgetting everything almost does sound like this like romantic possibility. I was like, oh, that'd be nice. And then, watching it now like older and like, different kind of breakup, it's like, oh well, there's a little bit more of like an acceptance of like everything that happens in your life is part of your life, and you don't destroy those memories. Like that's all.
It changes it. Those memories are like there to change you for a different kind of relationship or a different kind of personality that, will shape because of the experiences. But yeah, it was like such a harsh reality to like, when I watched it the second time, I was like, oh my gosh, like that's not a relationship. It doesn't matter. Like if you want it to be that way, that's a good relationship. That's not what it looks like. So if you guys haven't seen that movie, my listeners, if you made it this far, please watch that movie. When you're not going through a horrible breakup though, like it's not for the first time.
It's you might want to have a little more emotional distance.
Yeah. So speaking of like movies like that, what do you feel is a movie that everybody needs to see if they haven't seen it?
That's a great question. I know, I feel like there's one of the challenges is like there's always so much. I mean, there's so much available, and there's like such a like long and rich like history of all of it. One of the kind of like more sort of unseen ones that I like love in terms of relationships. So I guess it's like kind of more visible, but the Richard Linklater Before trilogy, it's like Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight. It's all, like Boyhood kind of got like more noticed when that came out, but it's kind of similar where it's 3 movies following like Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy over the course of, it's now what, like 25 years of this relationship. And it's just like very like raw and honest filmmaking, but 2, like I kind of love that kind of movie, like the hangout movie of like 2 people talking, and it sounds like it might be boring, but it's just a very like rich investigation, I think, and like those, I think, provide that kind of like raw, honest look at a relationship.
Did you see Malcolm and Marie?
I haven't yet. I've heard like mixed things.
Okay, so I watched it when it came out, and I didn't look at any of the reviews, because sometimes like when people are talking shit about something on Twitter, I'll actually be like, oh, I'm not going to watch that because there's so much shit talking going on. So I was like, I'm not even going to look at any tweets about this movie. But I watched it, and it was, the dialogue was very rough to watch, and it also was trying to be realistic in a way that is unrealistic because of the way they were talking to each other. It was like very emotionally abusive, and that does happen in relationships, but the way they were portraying it was like, I didn't like it. I felt like it was doing too much for what little it gave us. Like it was like, that the relationships are shitty, and you do say shitty things to your partner because you know how to like hit below the belt. But also, you can't have a full movie of just that dialogue and no like understanding of how the love began. Like, because now you're just like, they've hated each other since day one. Why are they even together? Like, kind of situation. So that's how I felt about it.
And that's what's kind of crazy about like the Before movies is, the first one, it's like 1995, I think, and it's kind of like a sort of like a meet cute like day, it's like a very like that's a very like nice happy movie. And by the time you get to the third one and they're like married, it kind of you feel like you've almost like spent a lifetime with these people.
Yeah, and that's what I like about movies is I want to have that connection. And with Malcolm and Marie, I immediately hated the male part. I mean, I hate.
Yeah, I hear that.
But it was like he was just not likable to the point where it'd be like, oh, I understand why she's taking this abuse.
Well, and like I kind of hear that too, and it's, I don't know, like that idea of like likability to me is always like an interesting thing because like I think there are ways to pull off having unlikable characters.
Yes.
But when you have a movie like that where you're just kind of thrown in this like unpleasant.
Yeah, it was like immediate. It wasn't even like I got, they didn't even take me out to dinner before they fucked me over in that movie. Like it's like, let me warm
just
up.
threw you right in.
Yeah, and like it just didn't do anything for me in the way that I thought, having a movie with just two people having these monologues would like do. I was like, just go to fucking bed and quit fighting. Like that's what I was thinking the entire time. I was like, it's 1 a.m. Both of you go to fucking sleep. Like I don't even want to. I wanted it to be over more than anything.
And and I think that I'll probably watch it just for like the curiosity side.
Yeah, I want to know your thoughts.
I like both those actors too, but and then like another one I would pick that I watched recently. It's an older film. It's called Los Olvidados. It's by a director named Luis Buñuel, who like he was like friends with Salvador Dali, and they like together in Spain, and like
shout out to my listeners in Spain. I got some fans out there. I don't know why. I love you though. Me encanta.
And he was a Spanish filmmaker, but he actually made this movie in Mexico. And Los Olvidados, it's about basically like a group of like orphaned children trying to like live their lives in very like impoverished and harsh circumstances. But it's also like then like Buñuel brings in that like surrealist side that he had with like Salvador Dali, but it's like a very like heartbreaking look at some of that childhood stuff, but it's also just like a really beautiful film. And it kind of captures life as a child, which I think is a hard thing to do. Like there's a different thing from like showing kids in a movie versus like almost actually showing their perspective on things. And this is like a cool one because like it's pretty heartbreaking, but it's very interesting and it's very like different than how a lot of other movies kind of portray childhood. So
interesting.
Look, and Buñuel's pretty amazing in all the things that he does.
Okay, I'll have to check that one out. Okay, so talking about, we talked about directors now. What do you feel about popular directors like that have this like cult following, so to speak, but they're popular, but they have like a certain person that will see every single one of their movies. So we have like the Tarantinos, we have the Scorseses, we have the Kubricks. What do you think about the Spielbergs? What do you think about that, that popularity of those directors and their fans and their movies? Do they live up to all their movies live up to the hype? And are their fans like nuts? And do you believe that they deserve, every single one of those directors deserves the praise that they get, and why or why not? Loaded question.
No, that's a good question. I think it's like it's interesting because I feel like some of my thinking on that has like even changed partially because of what we've talked about with like the glut of like superhero movies and how those kind of almost like take over everything. Is like, because if you'd asked me like 10 years ago, I would have probably said like Christopher Nolan, like he's got some good stuff, but he's pretty like wildly like overrated, and like you said, his fans are just so kind of asked about everything. Like that's amazing person ever. But now it's kind of like I just find it a relief sometimes to have directors like that who are able to make something that is original and interesting. And so even like Tarantino, like I could not stand The Hateful Eight. Like that was one of the more.
I hated that too. I saw that in the theater, and
I did too.
And with my dad and my brother, and I was like, "Get me the fuck out of here!" First of all, like
it was endless, and it just felt like I don't know. I mean, I'm normally kind of like pretty open to whatever, but it just felt like it was 3 hours of my life just in a room with
wasted.
Unpleasant circumstances, and then. But then, I thought like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was very interesting. And even when I don't love one of those directors' films, like I do think there's something interesting about kind of watching an artist develop over the course of their career, and how does something like The Hateful Eight juxtaposed to like Django Unchained, which I loved, and like why did Django work but this doesn't for me?
Right.
Almost kind of like the interesting side as like a viewer. And so I think like there's pluses and minuses, and I also sometimes worry that like specifically some of the directors you listed, like those are also very much like white male directors that have ascended to a position of power. And a lot of times their fan base is also sort of that like, you know, the person that I was when I was a teenager, which is that like, you know, the like white male film geek. And it's kind of like this almost closed system that this is what we watch and this is what it is. Whereas, you know, there are a lot of other filmmakers that are presenting very different views of the world, because I do think sometimes it becomes limiting when it's, yeah, that same set of directors like over and over.
Right.
And I think there's also, you know, there's serious issues in the film industry about, you know, getting those kinds of jobs, and how many films major studios are by women or
like why are like you know especially you know Black directors, like why are there it's like limited of what is, you know, popular or successful from these directors, and like Ava DuVernay, and like I don't understand like how is she the only one that is making waves right now, like
and that's a great question. And like with her, and like because, you know, I think for her, like When They See Us is probably like the best thing she's done. I don't think that would have been like, because that was released as like a mini series, like even that I think would have been hard to get into a theater, even with her kind of stature. And like she's definitely a great example. I also think about like kind of talked about, you know, like Greta Gerwig as like an example of like a female director that's still kind of making waves. Or you have Dee Reese with like Mudbound. I don't know if you saw that one.
Yes, I did. It was cool. Yeah, that was a good movie. So, you know, speaking of like those directors, like the Scorseses and you know, Spielbergs and all that, what do you feel about, you know, what could they do to assist in like representation as like successful white males? And I think of like Tarantino, he has tried to have a lot of representation. I mean, obviously, like you think of like Jackie Brown and, you know, having Pam Grier as like, he definitely puts women in roles of power. You know, you think like Uma Thurman in like Kill Bill, like, you know, what his representation is good for. Like he does a good job of having Black men and Black women, and also just women in these non-stereotypical roles, but also he gets a lot of like pushback because he's like, well, people are mad that he has like the N-word in like every scene. So he tries to have the representation, but sometimes he gets a lot of backlash. But do you think like Martin Scorsese and like Kubrick and all, you know, have they done a good job of allowing different kind of representation?
Well, and I think like Scorsese is interesting because like, well, one, I'll say like, yeah, I'm very much like a Scorsese fan. Like he's been one of my favorites for a long time. But one thing that I think he does do well is he has his like World Cinema Project, where he actually tries to get kind of international films, get them more like release platforms and publicity. And I think he does a good job with that. In terms of his own films, like I don't think he really does that, but I think he's kind of has like different goals in mind with some of it. And I think that is kind of the key, where a lot of those directors have that level of power, in that a lot of them have their own production companies or their own like imprints. And to use those, like when you get a good story that you think is worth telling, that, yeah, like who would be the best person to tell us? And it's interesting to me because almost paradoxically, like I feel like, you know, whether it's Ava DuVernay or even like Ryan Coogler, who did like Black Panther, like they're better about helping other directors get things made than some of these kind of more like white power brokers are, even though they don't have the same level of cachet as necessarily like Spielberg, where like Judas and the Black Messiah, again, like I think Ryan Coogler produced that, and he like very specifically, you know, you don't want to hire a white director to tell that.
You can't.
It's
It's
not
not
that
going to
story to
work.
tell. And I think about, Spielberg, I think he's gotten a little better, but going back to, I don't know if you ever saw in the 90s Amadeus, or not Amadeus, Amistad, his
I saw it.
movie.
It came out in like 96. So I was like too
Yeah.
young for it, but also I remember seeing the previews incessantly on like pay-per-view, but
Yeah,
never saw it. Never wanted to.
It's the story of a slave ship, but it's basically like a white savior story.
Oh God, yeah.
So that's kind of, and even Spielberg, there's a lot about, him directing The Color Purple in the 80s, and was he the right person to do that? And like, I think it's actually like a pretty good movie, but I don't think it necessarily captures like
The horrors.
The horrors and like the level of anger that I think like Alice Walker has at some of the things that
Yeah.
book. But that to me would be the real thing is, if you're in the position of power like Spielberg and you see, here's this great book like The Color Purple by an amazing author.
Let me produce it and let me find. Let me find.
Is that your story to tell?
No, it never was, and it shouldn't have been.
And I do think like a lot of that is the trickiness of like that studio system, but also, like, is there not a Black director that this job would be better suited toward? And I think Color Purple, like, certainly.
Absolutely. But it wasn't the time in America for that to be possible, because that was even a shocking movie to even be made. And, it would be hard to find somebody to tell that story that had the power and the money to get it to a cinema. So,
well, and then that's the other side of it then is like, on the one hand, like we're saying, it would be beneficial to have someone tell that story who I think is like more qualified. But then two, it's like, well, but if that means something like that doesn't get made, then like, is there value in something like The Color Purple existing in a realm where like there just wasn't a lot being made like that? And so then there's that kind of question of like, have things really changed with that? And like, sort of and sort of no. I mean, I go back to like, what was it, 2 years ago? Green Book won like Best Picture instead of Black Klansman, right? And it's basically a repeat of like Driving Miss Daisy winning over Do the Right Thing.
Yes.
Of Spike Lee losing to a movie about
a white savior,
white friendship.
Yeah. Oh, I love this old white lady that I'm driving around that is very racist. Like, that's not a feel-good movie for Black people. That is like Black trauma personified. Like, we have to pretend to be nice and act, accordingly, or else we'll get killed or. So
I mean, it's that kind of, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Or you have this, trope of, you get a Black director and it isn't taken seriously. So that can happen also. I mean, I just think of like Tyler Perry. Like, he has definitely put himself in a box because of the success Medea has had with white audiences. And I think anything going forward that he makes will never be taken seriously, especially by people in the Black community that enjoy movies that aren't with a man who dresses up like an old Black woman.
Well, there you get also like some of the tensions there where, I mean, he and Spike Lee have like gone at each other in the press a lot because Spike, I mean, he really, really like hated on Tyler Perry in some of the interviews. And, Tyler Perry's like, I make movies that people want to see, and I, employ.
Yeah, I found an avenue, and I'm gonna keep cashing in because somebody's watching it, and I don't care what anybody says. I'm a billionaire, so he's like, I'm doing something right.
But I actually think he's the talented person that it's kind of like a smaller part, but in Gone Girl, he plays like the lawyer.
Yes, the lawyer.
Really good. Like,
yes.
Really good.
Yeah, so I could see him being a serious actor.
Yeah, I mean, he's totally talented.
He's very talented, but he also has done a disservice for a lot of, Black actors and actresses, because if they're in his movies, people do not see them as somebody who can do a serious role because they were Mr. Brown on, Medea's Family Reunion. So it's like, it's a double-edged sword. It's like, yes, I'm super glad that Tyler Perry has made a name for himself and also created like Black Hollywood in Atlanta. But also I'm very upset that white people will ask me about Medea movies. I'm like, I don't want to talk to you about a Medea movie ever in my life.
Well, and some of that, like, it gets into that kind of idea about like, is film about like escapism, or is it about like trying to actually deal with like real things? And there's actually like, I think a lot of like things to be said on both sides, where even going back in like film history, like there's a movie called Sullivan's Travels. It's from like the 40s, but it's about like the Great Depression. And it's this like director who wants to like make this movie that shows like the real struggles that people are going through and like how the world really is. But he can't really get it made. And then the sort of struggle also is that like, do most people just want escapism? And like Tyler Perry like certainly offers a level of escapism.
I mean, my dad went and saw Boo 2 in the theaters and like rants and raves about it. So somebody's watching his movies.
Well, all I know,
love it.
Yeah, when your dad and my dad go to the movies together, it's always like they pick like the worst thing possible to see. And
I think they went and saw it. What was it? It was a couples movie because something was sold out. The Joker was sold out, and so they saw like a Nicholas Sparks movie together as two married men and an interracial couple, essentially.
Oh yeah, well, Mark and Peter's sort of, their brother-in-law bromances and ongoing. It's
very, very interesting. Like I need to get them on the pod to talk about the relationships.
Talk about their love for each other.
Yeah. And this is my favorite memory of going to the movies with your dad and my dad is that the preview for Taken 2 was coming on and we were watching the preview and then, fades to black and my dad goes, "Damn, they took that bitch again." In the middle of the movie theater and everybody was like dying. And I was like, oh my God. But so it's just an interesting film, definitely brings up all these different emotions, especially like with the story itself, but also the directors, the producers and the actors and actresses that are a part of them. What do you feel any director is overrated and why?
Yeah, there's quite a few. My hate ranting will go on for as long as you let me. The one I really don't care for is David Lynch, who did Twin Peaks and Blue Velvet and all that. And I totally get where he's like love it or hate it, and his whole kind of that very like surrealistic sensibility. But to me, it's like kind of the wrong kind of surrealism, where I'm just gonna throw random shit on the screen and see what sticks. Somehow people will read this like deep symbolism into a shot of just like an ant crawling in an anthole or whatever the fuck. And
and it's like fuck you.
I find him very like irritating and kind of pretentious. So he's definitely up there. Other ones I would pick, like, I don't know, there's a few like of kind of like older directors. There's like Brian De Palma, who made like Carrie, and he made Snake Eyes, the Nicolas Cage great legendary film. But
Nicolas Cage,
kind of like all style, no substance. And then I don't know, like there's always a few, but
those are the ones that stick out to you.
David Lynch is the biggest one. Where like
David Lynch, if you want to square up with Joe, I have his address. So like hit me up, AnnaTudePod@gmail, and I'll set up the fight.
Yeah, he can do his like whatever transcendental meditation and then beat the shit out of me.
You're like, did you see that bird fly across the sky as I punched Joe in the head?
Exactly.
So well, in that same realm, who's your absolute top director ever? Scorsese.
I would have to go Scorsese, yeah. Like, and I think to me, I always think of it as like the mixture of like longevity and greatness, where like he's been making great things for so long. And I think about it as like I love basketball, and a lot of times when they talk about like the Hall of Fame debate for a player, it's like both like peak versus like lasting power. And, because somebody like Derrick Rose had like a great peak, but he didn't really last. Whereas somebody like Tim Duncan was great forever. And for me, like Scorsese's like the Tim Duncan, where it's like he's just been steadily great for 50 years now.
Yeah.
Every movie he makes, like
And he's given us so much and gotten so little back because he's, was snubbed at so many award shows, which
and
how?
Yeah, I don't know. And you look back at like Goodfellas lost at the Oscars to Dances with Wolves, and it's
Jesus
like,
Christ, who has fucking even watched that movie? I've never ever
it's terrible.
met somebody who's like, I enjoy Dances with Wolves. Never in my life.
I mean, that's the classic, like the double VHS that is on back order at the library in the early 90s. And
yes,
like,
yes.
People give a shit about
exactly
another white savior movie, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Scorsese is definitely there, and then only other one I would kind of put like in competition with him would probably be I'll just say Scorsese. Yeah, like I don't know, nobody else really like
put him up there. That's your number one.
He's on the pedestal. Yeah, he's my number one.
Yeah, so Scorsese's your favorite director. Who's your favorite actor, actress?
Oh, that's tough.
And tell me why it's Adam Sandler. I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah. Hey, Uncut Gems is actually super good.
That's what I've heard. I cannot get behind it because I have this like disdain for Adam Sandler, but I heard he doesn't play Adam Sandler, which is very shocking.
And to the degree that he's obnoxious in that one, he's like supposed to be obnoxious.
Yeah. And where his whole trope is I'm a annoying middle-aged man and I'm also dating this hot woman who would never talk to me in real life, but I digress.
Oh yeah.
But
I would say like favorite all time is probably De Niro, partially because of those like Scorsese collaborations. I mean, that was quite a run. And then kind of more like
he's another one that has been, it doesn't matter what movie he's in, he's like super consistent. And I can't think of a bad De Niro film. Even like you think of like Meet the Fockers, like that wasn't supposed to be like, a role for him, like to be hilarious. I mean, he was hilarious. It's fucking funny.
Well, and I think people sometimes get mad at older actors when they pick those roles. And it's like, one, I'm sure you get tired of doing, just like heavy stuff all the time. And two, like, I don't know, it's a job. Like it's not.
Yeah, it's like I want to hang out with Ben Stiller for 7 days a week, but
then other kind of like recent actors, like just from watching the like Judas and the Black Messiah, like Lakeith Stanfield, I think is like super underrated. Like I think he's a very interesting actor.
He's great, and he has this like ability to be like strange in a very interesting way, and it's like he's like TBD on like his personality because I don't know if he actually has one or if that is his personality. Like I'm like very TBD on like what, but I definitely agree. He's like so just everything he does, I'm like captivated. I'm like, ooh, that's crazy. Yeah.
And then for actors, like I've always loved Amy Adams. Like I just think she's really interesting, and like a lot of what she does is kind of like under the radar because she's more like subtle than like kind of Meryl Streep, like give me an Oscar right now thing.
Yes.
But like I think she's great. Other ones, like Cate Blanchett, I still like love. She's always been interesting and everything she does. But like I feel like there are like a lot of talented like actors and actresses that I just again I hope they don't all get subsumed into just being in superhero movies for
forever. Time. Like it's crazy. It's like Gal Gadot, like what, get her out of my life, please, for the love of God. Like,
well, and I didn't even watch Wonder Woman.
I saw the first one, fell asleep, didn't even want to see the second one. Doesn't even interest me, and I just can't stand Gal Gadot because she just seems like she's just hot for the sake of being hot, and also isn't doing anything for like the film industry for women. I'm like, ugh.
Well, wasn't she also the one who put out that like the
pandemic video of
pandemic, singing? Like Imagine?
Like that help. Who did that help? I would love to know. I need somebody to write in and be like, that song saved my life during the pandemic.
Thank God all these beautiful out of touch millionaires were there to bolster our spirits.
Yeah, to show me it's okay to stay home during a pandemic when I have foreclosure notice coming soon. Speaking of like Scorsese getting snubbed at the award shows, I'm going to be dropping this episode during like the Golden Globes, which everybody's like super pissed about because, or all these award shows, everybody's like mad. Do you think they matter to the scope of like actually showcasing what's a good movie or a good actor or a good director?
I think they do and they don't, in that like they're useful as like almost like a historical time capsule of like what people
liked, yeah,
versus what actually endures. Because I feel like, you know, if you look back at the list of like what won Best Picture at any given award shows, I would say it's very rare that you would look at that and say like, oh yeah, that really was like the best year. So I think it's almost more that like historical record. Like sometimes I think they get it right. Like I would agree like with last year when like Parasite swept everything. Like I thought
that movie, oh my god, Chef's Kiss, that had me like from the jump. Like I was like, oh my god, they're like their toilet is in their fucking kitchen. I'm sucked in right now. And the fact that these people are horrible all the way around, but I don't want them to get found out. I mean, it was just it was great.
And then so like that one's kind of interesting, but then again, like the year before it was like Green Book or whatever the fuck one.
Fuck that movie.
But then the one thing I would say, like just on, I do think there's like a use as almost just like a cultural thing where like this is one of the rare times when people are like debating and discussing what movies are good, and it's something that's actually, you know, broadcast to tens of millions of people or however many watch it. And the other thing I really appreciate and like seeing that they do is like the technical categories, because that's one of the rare times you actually see that, where they give out an award for best editing or best sound design or best costume. And like sometimes I think we lose sight of all that in film, like how much work goes in from all these people. And it also, a lot of times, even when they're doing like the short nomination clips, you actually get more of a sense of like what that work is and what that looks like to construct this, you know, this experience that you get. And so I really value that they still have those categories. It's kind of a shame because they've actually started trying to push some of those off the broadcasts because it takes so long. But like, I feel like it's so rare that those people get their time.
Their recognition, because
you can see it sometimes when some of those, you know, kind of career people who've worked in the industry win for the first time. Like it's a very like moving experience for them. I mean, you've dedicated your whole life to this art form, and there you are on national TV. You get to thank your family. And
that I finally, all these hours I put in and all this hard work is being recognized by, you know, the masses, which is that is true about those award shows, is that you do get to see the quote unquote little people that actually are necessary to making a film.
And so that's where I do think there's still like a lot of value in those. Like the whole debate about who should or should not win to me is almost like
asinine. Doesn't even matter. Because it's like, I mean, I think, you know, Leonardo DiCaprio will be fine if he doesn't win another award in his life. So does that really matter? But what does matter is like getting these, you know, smaller movies and also like Parasite, you think of like him as a director, like this is going to open up so many more avenues for like, you know, him to create those movies, because people went and saw it after he won. It wasn't because they, you know, wanted to. It's like, oh, I got to see this. He won. This movie must be great. So I think that does give some, you know, spotlight to the movies people wouldn't see.
And I think it helps when, like when something like Moonlight wins that a lot of people might not have sought out on their own. I mean, for like a general, you know, audience, Moonlight probably wasn't something on their radar until it won.
Exactly.
Or some value.
Or when the whole drama with La La Land getting called out.
That was I will say, as like almost like a guilty pleasure, I do actually like La La Land. A lot of people hate it, but
I just don't like Emma
musical thing.
What's her name? Emma Stone. Stone. I used to like her when she was coming out like in her like teen flicks, but now I'm like I can't watch her in anything else because that's what she plays like that same character to me as she did in Easy A. But Ryan Gosling, gotta love him. I love him. I do too. He's such a versatile person. I don't know if his Mickey Mouse days when he was like singing like sexual R&B jams as like and he can actually sing. Like he's very talented.
Well, actually, one of my kind of one of the movies that really had an effect on me was his performance in Half Nelson, which like, you know, he plays like a crack addict school teacher, but a teacher, and like the teaching scenes are actually like really dynamic and interesting. And like I saw it when I was at Boulder, and like I mean, it sounds kind of like corny to say, but like that's actually the movie that made me want to be a teacher. Like,
wow.
Like on the screen, I was like, that looks like an interesting.
You're like, I also would like to be a crackhead teacher.
I was to say, I didn't take up the crack part, at least not yet.
I am. I'm about to hit the crack pipe right now. It's in preparation, for tomorrow with my 7-year-olds. But
I thought it was just to honor President's Day.
That too.
Shout out to George Washington.
Yeah, hell yeah. So yeah, when you think of like these award shows and like how there's so much controversy, I think now they've lost their like, I think people understand the purpose of these award shows now. It's not necessarily about, is this movie the best movie this year, or are we giving chance for other movies to be recognized even if they don't win? So I think people are realizing like reward shows don't matter in the grand scheme of things, but they're fun, and they also are important for like you said, the set designers and the musical directors and all that. But so we could talk about movies. I feel like we could have like a separate podcast where like you bring up movies and I respond to them and give my uneducated take on whatever film you bring up. But let's do a lightning round. I didn't prepare you for this. You're gonna say if you hate it or love it. I'm gonna go through some movies. Fargo.
Love it.
Gone with the Wind.
Hate it.
Citizen Kane.
Love it.
Let's see. Casino.
Love it.
Rosemary's Baby.
Hate it, surprisingly.
Me too. Let me think. I'm trying to think of like a Clockwork Orange.
Ooh, that's a tough one because I hated it the last time I watched it, but I feel like I need to watch it again because it's only Kubrick I don't like.
Yeah. Requiem for a Dream.
Love it.
Me too.
Sort of guiltily, but yeah.
Yes, I've seen that movie like more times than I would like to admit. Let me think. What else? Dallas Buyers Club.
Haven't seen it actually.
Okay. I'm trying to think of like popular movies that have like won. Oh, I think that's pretty good that we got your take. You only hated Rosemary's Baby and Gone with the Wind, which is right. Those were the right answers.
Those are the right. Yeah, like Rosemary's Baby. I am baffled by the love of that movie.
It's 3 hours long. It's very draining, and it doesn't.
And like tonally, it's just kind of all over the place. It's
yes.
Kind of, what is this? And that's actually going back to like the overrated. I would put Roman Polanski as overrated. Like,
absolutely.
One, kind of a garbage human being.
Yes.
But two, like, I just like of his movies, it just doesn't grab me. And
they're like one of those movies, like, I'm like, I'll see it because I know it's like popular or you're supposed to see it, but I will never watch it again. So yeah. All right. To wrap this up, I like to ask my guests, what is your favorite Britney Spears song of all time? I don't know if you've seen the documentary Framing Britney, but really, they've done my girl wrong, and I need her to get justice. But what's your favorite Britney Spears song?
Do I have to pick one?
Yes, you do. I know there's so many to choose from.
I know, that was the tone I was trying to get. Yes, there's just so many. I
think Paul had trouble with this also. He was very upset that I even
What did he pick, or can you not tell me?
I'm not telling you because I don't want to sway you.
So I would actually say it's gonna sound like a corny answer, but I gotta go Oops, I Did It Again. Like, I think it's actually like the melody is actually kind of interesting, and I'll also say, as someone who was a sort of maturing boy at that age,
that video left
an imprint.
It definitely was your sexual awakening to know that you liked women. I'm glad. So I have to ask that because there are right answers to that question also. So I'm glad you chose a correct answer.
I feel like now we got to do a podcast breaking down. What was the Britney Spears movie? Was it
Crossroads?
Crossroads? Yeah, we got to do a deep dive.
She's a great actress. I'm gonna,
I'm sure. Yeah, up there with Kate Blanchett.
Oh, absolutely.
Helen Mirren's.
Meryl Streep. As soon as Britney gets control of her life, you better watch out. She's coming back. she's gonna come for one of your awards.
I hope so, man. That is actually a really sad story.
Like, it is. They did her wrong. We, as a society, with our obsession with like celebrity and just, you know, making women out to be like these sexual deviants is like wild. And hopefully we move away from that.
And how much she was like, you know, some of the uncomfortable interview questions and things she got her whole life. Like
she was 17 and people were like, "Are you a virgin?" What?
Yeah.
I think everybody who interviewed her should be in prison right now. I'm going to say it. Joe Biden, what are you going to do to fix this?
Lock them up. Lock
them up. So, yeah. So, Joe, do you have any final thoughts or final movies or do you have a quote from a movie that you want to say that I'll let the audience just like figure out what movie it's from?
Oh man, I'm always bad with movie quotes. That's something I've just like always had a hard time with. Yeah, that's I don't really like.
You don't like quote movies?
Well, like this is gonna sound really nerdy, but like the dialogue isn't always like the thing that sticks with me. A lot of times it's more just kind of like the visual. But I'll just leave it with one of my favorite like delivered lines in one of my favorite movies. And I'm not supposed to say it, it's supposed to guess it.
Yeah, I want the audience to figure out what movie it's from.
Okay, so fucking dog has fucking papers.
Okay, so
it's kind of an obscure one.
Okay, so if you're listening to this, if you made it this far, you need to send me an email, attitudepod@gmail. If you guess the movie, I will send you some merch. How about that?
There you go. I like it.
Yeah. So, Joe, thank you for being a guest on the pod, and love and light to everybody who's listening. Bye. Listeners, so I have some exciting news. My Patreon is now only $2 a month. Patreon is just a place that supports artists and podcasters like myself, and it helps us make a little bit of money. So it's only $2 to join the Attitude Patreon. The Patreon comes with bonus episodes every 15th and 30th of the month. So if you're interested in getting ad-free episodes, early episodes, and video of the episodes we record, head on over to patreon.com/attitudepod. Now let's get on with the show.